Hey everybody, Jason Davis here live from McIntyre's in Washington, D.C. for our World Cup preview. One day until the World Cup, mere hours until the World Cup gets underway in Moscow, Russia tomorrow, with Russia facing Saudi Arabia to open up the tournament. Thank you very much for joining us here on Compass Football as we get underway for real, broadcasting about the beautiful game here from the United States, from Washington, D.C. I'm here by myself at the moment, but I'll soon be joined by Charlie Boehm from MLSsoccer.com and another number of other places. Excuse me, Charlie. One of the good guys, knows the game inside and out. He'll give us some insight into a lot of things today. Obviously, for American soccer fans, it's not just about the World Cup starting tomorrow. In fact, it's probably not a lot about that at all, although as fans of the game, we certainly can watch from afar, even though our team's not in it. For U.S. men's national team fans, that is. But for American soccer fans of all stripes, no matter who they support, the idea of the World Cup coming back to the United States in 2026 is a very big deal. Obviously, the vote held early this morning, East Coast time, U.S. time, but in the afternoon in Russia, the United States prevailing, the United States, Mexico, and Russia, Canada, the United States, Mexico, and Canada thrown in there for the united bid. All three of those countries together, united in strength behind those three countries, and they get the vote to go their way for the World Cup in 2026, beating out Morocco. It was not as close as many people thought it was going to be in the end. There was clearly some debate as to whether or not the political situation around the globe would have an impact on votes. It ultimately turned out that the United States and the power of the economics of it all probably carried them through. In the end, Morocco's infrastructure, certainly the $11 billion in profit that the United bid presented to FIFA as the potential windfall for the organization, carried the day. This means a lot for soccer in the United States. It is 8 years of buildup. Obviously, with the U.S. not qualifying for the World Cup in 2018, there will be lots of questions on how to get ready for that tournament, how this men's national team program can get back on its feet and try to build something towards a World Cup on home soil. Very different than, say, 1994, which was all about not embarrassing ourselves to a certain extent. Obviously, those players in that 94 team in a smaller World Cup did very well and surprised a lot of people by advancing out of the group in that tournament. But this time around, it's going to be a higher bar. And even though the United States failed to qualify for 2018, the amount of young talent coming through in this generation that we're seeing arrive now, in the Christian Pulisic's, Weston McKennie's, certainly Tyler Adams and Josh Sargent, means that there will be expectations. All of those players will be in their prime come 2026. Now, can U.S. soccer get their direction correct and their development correct and their head coaching situation correct in order to take advantage of that group when they all reach that prime, when that tournament comes back to the United States? And of course, you want to qualify for 2022 in the meantime in order to build towards something. All right, so this bid is now done. The United States will be the host of the World Cup in 2026. Let's just take a look at the potential host cities for this World Cup. A situation where 23 cities have been identified as potential hosts, but only 16 will be chosen. You see the three up there in Canada: Edmonton, Montreal, and Toronto. Remember that Vancouver pulled out of the World Cup bid for 2026. They didn't like the rules and the requirements that FIFA had put in place around things like security and the cost of the situation there with what FIFA demands of their host cities. And then you have the group of U.S. cities, of course, and then down in Mexico, Monterrey, Guadalajara, and Mexico City. So 3 in Mexico, 3 in Canada. That leaves 17 for the United States, including places like Orlando and Kansas City, cities that may not have been at the forefront of a bid in a lot of people's mind. And there's a balance here. Obviously, in '94, you had a World Cup that was pre-MLS. You didn't have an idea yet of what the soccer hotbeds, at least on the professional level, were across the country. This time around, you have a better idea because the league is now almost 25 years old, and there are clearly people across the country who have been out to support their national teams, their professional teams in their given environments, and that means that you have something to go on in terms of the elements of picking these host cities. So will we see places like, obviously, will we see some of these places that have proven to be good MLS markets, but not necessarily the biggest cities in the country? Will we see them given an opportunity to host World Cup games? This is not clear as to where the bid might end up going. Here's a question that certainly came up after the vote this morning. Carlos Cordero asked it, was asked this question on his conference call when the United States, Mexican, and Canadian presidents got together. They're all co-chairs of this bid. It was, will all three countries qualify automatically? Now remember that the World Cup in 2026 is going to be the expanded version, 48 countries participating, the first 48-team World Cup, at least as far as we know, because Gianni Infantino's attempt to get a 48-team World Cup pushed through for 2022 came up short at this FIFA Congress. So there's room for more countries, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it seems right that all three would get an automatic place in the tournament. Of course, the only other joint hosting of a World Cup in history is South Korea and Japan, so only two there. A bigger tournament, three countries, and look, while it's certainly possible that a country like Canada could figure things out and get ready and qualify for 2022, obviously that's a difficult challenge for a country that has been outside of the World Cup since 1986. So if this is an opportunity for them to work towards something where they know they'll be in a World Cup, that could be a benefit to that country. As for the United States, I think we're all at this point now looking at failing to qualify for 2018, seeing that the state of the men's national team, and wondering if not having to qualify for a World Cup in 2026 is actually the best situation for the United States men's national team. Meet those challenges. We're looking at a World Cup that starts tomorrow with Russia hosting Saudi Arabia, and while that is not the toughest team in Russia's group, there are certainly questions around Russia's preparedness for this World Cup because they did not have to qualify. Are they going to come up short? And the domestic league and the influence of the Russian league, the Russian Premier League, on the national team, a question mark as well, and something that maybe the United States men's national team can learn from. Didn't qualify for 2018, and some people will pin that on the number of American players who came back to the United States for big paydays. Something similar happening in Russia. The only reason they might be in the tournament is because they are hosting and they automatically qualify. So 2026, what is it going to mean for American soccer? How big of a deal will it be in comparison, say, to 1994, which was the dawn of the modern era of the game in the United States? Again, no national first division until 1996, after 94, and the requirement from FIFA that the United States launch that league in order to host the World Cup. And I've had it asked me on Twitter whether or not FIFA might have put in conditions on this World Cup as well, something like, for example, promotion and relegation. Perhaps FIFA would require the United States to institute a pro-rel system in order to be the host for this particular tournament. Now, I don't think that that's likely. I think that probably in this situation, the clout of the U.S. Economically, and clearly the influence of Mexico, which is a well-respected footballing country, and Canada, which everybody loves Canada, probably means that there were no contingencies or requirements, rather, for this united bid to get the World Cup. I think ultimately what you saw is that these voters determined that the promises made by the Trump administration in those three letters that were reported on by Andrew Doss of the New York Times, and the economic interests, the economic value of the tournament here in the United States, largely with most of the games taking place in this country, means that it was the better choice. It's hard to know whether Morocco would have pulled off pulled off a good World Cup, and they've failed now multiple times to try to secure hosting rights for the World Cup in their country, and you have to feel for them. And as American soccer fans, again, the celebration should be on, but now the hard work begins, and you've seen people like Kyle Martino on Twitter suggest that, yes, there are some problems with the way FIFA runs a tournament, and some of these cities may be hurt, as a matter of fact, at least in terms of their budgets, by the fact that this tournament requires so many things on the part of these cities per FIFA regulations. But if you see the World Cup as anything but a positive for the game in the United States, I'm not sure how you can get to that point. There's a question about leadership here. There's a question about structure here. But this just provides more impetus for people to go out and do the hard work necessary to make this World Cup truly matter to the fullest extent that it possibly can in the United States. The World Cup only comes every 4 years. It hasn't come to the United States since 1994 in the men's game. This is the opportunity to really move up in the world, not just in terms of celebrating the game on American soil, but perhaps with a league that will be, at that point, nearly 30 years old or over 30 years old, and an opportunity for young players to see something, a goal in mind. How many young American players are now targeting the idea of playing on home soil in a World Cup in 2026? Somebody said it on Twitter, and I can't really credit them because I don't remember who it was, but think about it. There are 12 and 13-year-olds right now who can imagine playing in the men's national team in the United States in a World Cup in 2026, and that's a very big deal indeed. All right, so we're live here at McIntyre's and the calm before the storm. As you can see, no games on yet. World Cup starting tomorrow in Moscow with Russia and Saudi Arabia. I should have Charlie Boehm with me here in just a couple of minutes to get us started previewing that tournament. Certainly talk to Charlie about his impressions of this World Cup vote as well. Carlos Cordeiro, is he somehow vindicated in the way that he has handled his job through this first couple of months since being elected in February? There are questions now about his focus and where he should be turning to now that the job is done and the World Cup for 2026 is secured. It doesn't have to be one or the other, or maybe it did. Maybe that's certainly the message that Carlos Cordeiro has put out there for everybody. Maybe it had to be all in on the World Cup for 2026 and the transformative power of that tournament. Now that that's done, now that he's not going to have to jet set around the world talking to potential voters, maybe he needs to turn, well, he certainly does need to turn his attention back to the United States. So what's first? Where are the areas that U.S. soccer is failing that Carlos Cordeiro needs to apply his attention to? And really, can he help bring about a revolution or something akin to that in the United States Soccer Federation after so many people upset over the way that the men's campaign went for the 2018 World Cup and the indications that there are many problems throughout the systems that are in place here? What's the next step for U.S. soccer's influence on all of this? All right, let's take a quick break. When I come back, hopefully Charlie Boehm. If not, we'll have an opportunity to talk to, we'll have an opportunity to take your tweets or your comments, or we'll get into the World Cup starting in Russia tomorrow morning. Saudi Arabia and Russia getting underway at the World Cup. It's quite a thing indeed. Let's be right back. There we are back at McIntyre's in DC. Jason Davis, Compass Football, Davis Up Front World Cup special preview, something in that area. 2026 on my mind today. Charles Boehm, as you can see, with me now. And Charles, you just got here. Haven't had a chance to ask you about this yet. So what do you make of the 2026 vote after all of that consternation over maybe we weren't going to get it?
Better than the opposite, I suppose. If you're a North American fan who wants the World Cup to come back to these shores, people felt pretty good about the 2022 campaign, only to get a gut punch on Election Day. It was really fascinating to me, even though the vote turned out to be a little bit more one-sided than we expected. I suppose the short answer I should give you is just that money talks, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at twice the payday.
Yeah.
North America versus Morocco.
Well, it was one of those things, though, and I was thinking about this, and I'm sure you saw that George Qureshi tweeted something this morning that was extremely cynical about the chances that this vote would go the U.S. way. I don't know if you saw this. He said something to the effect of, why would anybody think this is going to go the United Bid's way? Because when you have a country like Morocco that needs to build a bunch of things, typically FIFA executives, people running these federations, see that as an opportunity to get their fingers into the pies when it comes to the building and the infrastructure and the money that flows to a country that needs it. So you could say money talked in maybe the obvious way, but not the usual FIFA way.
Then I suppose I think you could build the case that the system and the voters that are involved in that system benefit from a closer race, right? Mm-hmm. Because that maximizes the potential value, the worth of your vote, the worth of your time when it comes to people politicking. But at the end of the day, there's also a human element here. I think the 2016 U.S. presidential election showed us that voters aren't always motivated by the things that are easy to measure on paper.
Yeah.
So I think there was a little bit of that, too.
I just turned your microphone on, so I'm sure nobody heard the first. We're working through the kinks here.
Thank you, Jason.
Live, and so I had to pull the curtain back. I just turned the microphone on, so that's my fault, Charlie. But we can hear you now. All right, so and I was talking about this. It's easy to sort of get wrapped up in this. Oh, it's so it's going to be so great in 8 years, and the World Cup's coming back to the United States in a transformative moment. And certainly, that's what Carlos Cordero was working for, and what this was all about. I think it's going to be big, but how do we, I think a lot of people will say, well, we're not really kind of in a place where we should just be excited. We should be working, or we should be doing something. We should be questioning the authorities, even though this has come out on the side of positivity.
Well, it's true that, the comparisons, I think, to USA 94 hit a limit when we get into this topic, because our soccer culture and cultures, when you look at Canada and Mexico as well, are not in the same place that they were in 1994. Right. It's not going to have the same effect because it's not the same landscape. The landscape is totally different. And I think there has been an end of innocence in the past few years. Even if you want to go all the way back to 2010, when the 2022 World Cup bidding process was sorted out, the scales have come off our eyes in the sense that we now understand what the dominant factors are here. We know that the federations involved want money. We know that the cities involved want money and economic impact. And of course, FIFA and everyone involved in FIFA is highly concerned with money, no matter how many times their hands have gotten slapped as they reach into the trough.
I guess one of the things I wonder, and dealing with, talking to American soccer fans of all different viewpoints, and I know you do this too, is it guaranteed that all that money that's going to flow here or come out of a World Cup in 2018 is going to be misused, or is somehow, I don't think they speak for everybody, but there are some people who would say, well, this is just rewarding the entrenched power structures that don't do it right. So how do we, is the money bad, I guess is the question.
Well, it certainly could be. It could be bad, it could be good, and it's a valid point that, I don't know that people necessarily need to feel depressed or upset. It's an opportunity, and the reason I think some people are concerned or not excited today is that they perceive that this opportunity is likely to be fumbled away, or is going to be a trickle-down situation like so many other aspects of the modern game. But that's not a fait accompli, in my opinion.
Okay.
We do need to. We do need to hold the people in charge's feet to the fire, right?
Right.
They've now they've made clear what their pitch is, right? Everybody knows because we know what they said to FIFA. We know what their dominant pitch is. We know they've been touting the $10-12 billion windfall for FIFA. We know they've been touting, what was it, average ticket price of $400?
Yeah.
$400. Now I know that our friends in the luxury world, our friends who have enough resources to sit in the suites and the luxury boxes are gonna inflate that number a little bit. But let's be real. It's not just about making money. It should be about full stadiums. It should be about growing the fan base, getting kids inspired, and that doesn't happen with just focusing on the money. I think we need a holistic approach, and I think we're right to be suspicious of the people in charge right now.
Okay, so obviously there's a tournament starting tomorrow. I want to talk about it. We're soccer fans. We're still going to watch it regardless of the U.S. men's national team participation. Mm-hmm. So, but with this World Cup coming in 2026, and I was talking a little bit about this before you arrived. What is the priority, do you believe, for Carlos Cordeiro? And I think that's couched in the question of just how much power does Carlos Cordeiro have here versus bouncing around the world and trying to get votes for a World Cup.
Well, again, they've shown us something that we can't and hopefully won't ignore, which is, all right, U.S. men's national team fans have been waiting with decreasing levels of patience for the hiring of a general manager, for the hiring of a head coach, for the program to take some direction, for reasons for hope. And Carlos Cordeiro has not been involved in that process because he's been traipsing around the world campaigning. Now, I understand why he felt that's important, but he's got to prove with his actions as well as
that's not the job. I mean, it's
yes.
part of the job, but it's not the job that he campaigned for.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, it was clear. It was certainly strongly suggested during the presidential election back in February and in the lead up to it that Sunil Gulati was going to take this over the finish line.
Right.
And Carlos Cordeiro could focus on matters at home. They didn't do that. Right?
No.
So Cordeiro became the front man on this, and again, understandably so. But I think back a lot about the Copa America 2 years ago, and some viewers and listeners may remember there was frustration at some of the smaller profile games were not full, or not even close to full.
Yeah.
And Sunil Gulati reassured us that the model had been carefully thought out, the pricing model was conceived thoughtfully, and in the end, they made an incredible amount of money off the Copa America.
Right.
But now we know there's a matrix here. Let's get some full stadiums. Let's get some cheap seats available to people so we can have both.
Right. Yeah. Again, I think that's what is distasteful for a lot of soccer fans, and it's not even just about access and the populist nature of the game, sort of around the world, and how we don't have that as much as maybe we should or could in this country. It's also about this notion that you are prioritizing money, and yes, money's important. Money helps you do a lot of things, but you're prioritizing money at every turn rather than picking and choosing your moments, say in terms of the price of a ticket for a national team game or whatever it might be, or where those national team games take place sometimes.
Well, again, the aforementioned Copa America, the United States came in 4th place, seemed to get a big boost from it on and off the field. Since that windfall,
like 4.5 place after that Argentina game. I'm not sure that counts.
Since that financial windfall filtered into the coffers, we've changed coaches. We've tripped on our faces.
Paid a lot to that
World
coach
Cup qualifying.
to go away. By the way,
that's true. But more than anything else, we've shown that money has only a tangential relationship to results on the field. Now, that's not the case for every federation. Certainly, it is for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so 2026, the vote's done. That's sort of the first thing happening around this World Cup, but the actual games start tomorrow. And the big news of the day is about Spain and what happened with their head coach and Lopet. I'm going to butcher his name. I tried several times today on the radio and I butchered it. It's Lopetegui or something like that? Lopetegui. There it is. The stresses. That's always hard. Lopetegui. Charlie knows.
Email Jason your complaints and comments.
Yeah. This is all because see, I already screwed it up. I already lost it. Lopetegui. This is all because he negotiated a deal to take over at Real Madrid, which is the biggest job in Spain, the biggest job in the world. And rather than hold this information for a month, it got out to the Real Madrid players in the team. Somebody who was not a Real Madrid player in the Spanish team found out about it. And Florentino Perez, being Florentino Perez, decided to announce that he had signed Lopetegui to a contract. This upset the new president of the Spanish FA, and he fired his head coach 2 days before their first game. I mean, that's insane. That's France level insane.
There's a lot of competing insanity here. Yeah, I mean, and I think depending on how the results go for La Furia Roja in the next couple of weeks here, we'll be talking about it. Either it will be ripping one party or another. There'll be many opinions. I've already had exchanged opinions with many different people from many different stances on Twitter today. It's fascinating. It's incredible. It's on the level of Roy Keane in Ireland back in 2002. And for me, and you know, again, everybody's going to come at this from a different stance. I know there's some blame that can be pointed towards the RFEF. The Spanish Federation made this decision supposedly over the objections of the players. The players involved wanted to keep him in charge, but it was simply seen as too much of a betrayal. We have to remind ourselves, this guy had signed a new contract to extend his tenure in charge of the national team through Euro 2020 just 3 weeks ago, I believe it was. So obviously, it's a great example of club versus country, the power that the biggest clubs in the world exert. I just called it a vulgar display of, and poorly timed display of power on Madrid's part. And
it's ego all over the place. So it's ego for Perez, who wants to be the one to announce this and doesn't care what damage it might do to the national team. Mm-hmm. And again, there's at least some idea that Lopetegui asked Madrid to announce this because it had already sort of leaked into the team, and it could have potentially upset the team if he's not being honest with them just on the eve of a World Cup. You have ego with the president of the federation, Rubiales, who comes in, has already sort of been an iron-fisted guy, campaigned on that idea. And he's like, wait a second, we just signed you to a new contract, as you said, and he didn't find out about the deal until 5 minutes before it was announced. So he feels like he has to maintain control of the federation. He can't lose face with Lopetegui basically, you know, saying I'm leaving, and I don't know. The question, I think, the bigger question is obviously what effect it has on the Spanish team, a team that people had said was a potential World Cup winner. This is a good enough team to win the World Cup. Are they now a good enough team to win the World Cup?
I think here we get a hint of why, and younger viewers may not remember this or know that there was an era when Spain were the world's greatest underachievers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But it wasn't that long ago that Spain consistently underperformed relative to their talent in big events like this, in large part because there's regionalism, there's factionalism, the Madrid-Barcelona club divide, the sort of tribalism of the Spanish game. We've gotten accustomed to the last decade or so of them, really putting that to the side and coming together as a really excellent program and team. But that's always there in the background, and I think we have to say that's a huge factor here. You could say the players. I think the players are professionals. They understand the rarity of the opportunity here on both a personal and collective level. I think there's some irony in the fact that the way to calm the waters in the federation's opinion is to hire, but after having this scuff, Madrid-related scuff, they hired
a former
Fernando
Madrid
Hierro,
player,
a Madrid icon to sort of be the guy. So it's everyone, I think, knows where the bread is buttered in Spanish soccer, for better and for worse.
So in my discussions today, the idea was proffered that out of every team in the World Cup, certainly among the favorites, if any team can handle this, if any team is sort of on autopilot, if any team has enough veteran leadership to maintain composure and win games and go about their business, it might be Spain. Do you believe in that?
I do. I think so. Given what the core of this group has gone through together over the past 8 to 10 years, and there's so many intangibles here. We have Andres Iniesta's final go round. Again, you have Madrid. Their Madrid contingent is flying high. They've proven themselves to be one of the great teams of all time with a third straight Champions League trophy. So
I think the jury's still out a little bit. You don't win the league, you win a chip. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to get into that debate.
It's a great topic.
It's a great topic. I love that topic.
They're a thoroughly modern, iconic team, I guess. So in that sense, that the Champions League certainly has come first for them. But I think there's just too many reasons for this team to rally at this moment rather than fall apart. We shall see.
It makes sense. It's Portugal to open up the tournament on Friday. Portugal's the defending European champions. They've got a younger element to their squad than they have in years past. This isn't even the same team, really, in a lot of ways, that won that Euro. Is this? I mean, what should Portugal do? Should Portugal come out and go at Spain? Now, Spain is going to have the better of the play in terms of possession. We expect that, but there may be some goal questions for Spain on occasion, and Portugal can certainly hit you in the mouth. So what does Portugal do?
I think you're going to see both teams be fairly cagey. Now, the cagey position.
Cagey World Cup games. That's never happened
for these
before.
two teams. That's going to look different. And, even when Spain sit back or a more reactive posture, they still tend to dominate position. I expect them to be sort of the protagonists in terms of that. Whereas Portugal maybe are a little bit more comfortable moving back into a shell. I don't think anybody. I think they're all realistic, and both programs have such high ambitions for this tournament that we may not see the fullness of their ambition and their full performance. I think the events of this week will only make this a little bit more of a chess match.
It should be interesting. Let's take a look at the World Cup groups. We've got an opportunity here to kind of look at the matchup. Obviously, the schedule matters here, and I think that maybe sometimes that's something we underrate when we talk about World Cup groups. We don't necessarily talk about when games happen in the group. We sort of just go, okay, here's the strongest team. We expect, Brazil to obviously cruise to a knockout round appearance. There's no reason to doubt them. But for some of the groups that maybe are more evenly matched, and I know there's no obvious group of death this time around. Sometimes schedule matters. So you have the two strongest teams in Group B, Portugal and Spain, going up against one another. Tomorrow's game, the opener, Russia, Saudi Arabia. Let's start with Group A, because I think there are some interesting storylines there. Russia is a weird team that didn't have to qualify. They are going to really go after you in the back. Or they're really, not going to go after you. They're really going to get on you in the midfield to keep you from attacking them in numbers or with speed. So can Russia, let's start with Russia. Can Russia handle the challenge of getting out of the group and be one of those hosts, not be the second host that fails to do so?
Well, we can argue about if there's a group of death. There's certainly a group of life in this World Cup, and it's Group A. There's one of my favorite sort of on-running FIFA conspiracy theories is just how the host nations, what kind of sweetheart draws they get, what kind of little subtle favors, and I think we can see here that Russia couldn't have asked for a better scenario for getting out of this group. So I do, although perhaps they didn't. This was formulated before Mo Salah was quite the titan that he's become in the recent months. That said, again, between the geopolitics of this tournament and just the simple value and the weight of it in Russia, as in it with any host country, I think Russia is going to get a positive result tomorrow. And I think they'll do what's necessary to get out, I think, as the second-place team, most likely. So
a positive result is that, a draw against Saudi Arabia is pretty disastrous.
I think they're going to take 3 points.
Okay.
I think they'll get 3 points.
Okay, and fair enough. I don't think that the Saudis are rated very highly. They have some young players who are probably going to be a little awed by the moment. And, it's a very domestically based squad for the Saudis, although, I think there'll be some interesting names. All right, so Egypt and Uruguay are the other two teams in that group. Obviously, you mentioned Mo Salah. The question is how quickly can he be fit and whether he's going to take any more photos with dictators. That's certainly something he wants to avoid. And Uruguay, the Uruguayans are the obvious favorites to get out of the group. They are, and I heard another preview. The friends from the Total Soccer Show were talking about this group, and they said you have at least 3 teams who are going to sit back and encourage pressure so that they can hit you on the counter to get their goals. What if nobody attacks? What kind of group do we have here?
Well, I actually like this Uruguay team. I think that they're formulated both in terms of the personnel and their mentality. And few nations on earth have as, I think, clear of a cultural and sporting identity kind of interwoven around their national team, the Charrua kind of spirit. Our favorite villain, Luis Suarez, still exemplifies that. And you're talking about a player who I think will feel feel just as much sense of urgency as any veteran star in this tournament, because he knows the clock is ticking. He knows, even getting out of the South American qualifying cycle is a dogfight. So I'm expecting him to raise his game, to drive his team forward. And obviously he's just one of many attacking talents they have to match with that sort of nastiness that we see in the midfield.
The nastiness is what I think people think about first when they think about Uruguay. But obviously, as you said, there's attacking talent in Cavani and Suarez will lead the line and probably be pretty formidable. And that group is not going to present them a challenge. It's really in the knockout rounds when you shouldn't present them a challenge. There may be some surprises. All right, so we talked about Portugal and Spain a little bit. Morocco, Iran. What do you expect? Portugal and Spain are the obvious choices to get out of the group. But what do you expect out of Morocco and Iran in terms of style and approach? Morocco could maybe surprise some people.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the pressure is off those teams in a lot of ways. They have the ability to hopefully play as much as you can on the world's biggest stage with fewer encumbrances than a favorite team would be. So, try and get the ball down and play. Try and go grab the brass ring as individuals.
Yeah.
Because another I think easily overlooked aspect of the World Cup is which individuals are gonna surprise us. Who's gonna elevate their career to a new level here. So I think that's what I'm looking at from those two teams. And I guess you could argue that Morocco's players are fully immersed in the European market and the foreign league and whatnot.
Kind of
but
world
with
of football.
Iran, I think we're going to see some sort of obscure talents get their chance to shine.
I like the human story sometimes and the spirit of the tournament. And obviously, Iran has political stickiness for a lot of people, but it's one of those situations where the people of Iran love the game, as much as anybody else in the world. There are some governmental attitudes about it that are troubling, but that's not the team. They're not the ones making those decisions about who can go watch football matches, for example. So you want them to do well because the people, the soccer fans in Iran, are really looking for that outlet and to show that they can play the game a little bit. I think that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And if there's ever a moment where we should all try to set aside our sort of political suspicions, tendencies, it's this one. And the joy. We just look at the crowds, right? Even with only half their population in the mix, even with women banned from their stadiums, the passion, the enormous numbers, the fervor with which Iran approaches this sport is just incredible. And it's hopefully they'll have a traveling contingent in Russia as well.
Shout out to that woman I saw put the fake beard on and go to the game in Iran. It was amazing.
Some of the bravest people in the game,
and she took video of it the whole time. Whatever. All right, so that's Group B. Let's move quickly. I don't want to keep you too long, Charlie. Group C, that's France, Australia, Peru, and Denmark. Peruvians are back since first time since '82. Australia are always the triers. They make it difficult on you, but sometimes they just don't have the talent. France has all the talent, but sometimes it's more about their internal mix. I think Didier Deschamps is an interesting element here for the French. I picked them to win, but I realize that's it could go either way for them in any situation. There's always a question of balance in the team. I think the English are probably more obsessed with Pogba's position than the French are, but there's always a question. So let's start with France. Can they win the whole thing?
I was writing about France in the lead up to their friendly against the United States last week, and it was fascinating to me actually. In the modern era, they've really kind of yo-yoed between incredible achievement and incredible levels of play and just absolute self-immolation, and it's really something. And I'm sure they're hoping that they can sort of smooth out those extremes. The Deschamps question is one. It's really hard for me to tell what his relationship is truly like with the players, what the extent of the bond both among the team and between the team and the staff. We've obviously the shadow of 2010, even though it's 8 years ago now, still hangs heavily over that team. There's so many different sort of potential divisions in a country and a player pool as diverse as France is. But I certainly hope and I expect that they're going to see this again as an opportunity, no matter what happens internally. And they have the luxury of a slow runway here. They can, I think, they can find their form in the group stage.
Yeah, that certainly it looks like it, because starting slow can be a problem if you're in a difficult group. But if you have maybe a little bit more freedom to build into the tournament, you can do that. So the French will be the favorites. Again, I picked them to win it, so I hope they figure it out. I hope Deschamps. Quick question on them. I've seen at least one proposed lineup that doesn't have Giroud at the top. Mm-hmm. And he obviously started against the U.S. He is their only number 9. But without him, they have a different look. Do you think Deschamps is just a little too married to the idea of a target forward at number 9, a guy that can head the ball in, and that's going to limit them? and maybe with Giroud recovering from his injury suffered against the United States, it actually benefits them a bit?
I'm not sure. I don't know that I would entirely agree. If we, maybe I would have a broader definition of what a modern number 9 is.
Fair enough.
Because when I look at the front three, there's been some looks of tossed out with Mbappe, with Griezmann in varying positions. If they play that 4-3-3, I think there's
a lot of interchange inside.
Yeah,
out
I mean,
stuff.
we're talking about very tactically intelligent, evolved players here. Mbappe is a fascinating one to me. Again, he has a lot on his shoulders and enormous talent given his age. I don't think the attack is going to be the problem, and I also do think that Giroud will get his chance. Again, if a team like that has to be prepared for a deep run, a variety of circumstances.
Everybody's going to have to contribute. Well, most players are going to have to contribute. Right. Your third string goalkeeper probably isn't getting off the pitch. Koscielny is a problem for them. You said that maybe the attack's not the issue. Defensively, they might have some issues.
And I think the other interesting angle with France is how the opposition handles them. It's easy to assume that their group stage opponents are going to drop in and limit their risks and try and create a couple blocks of 4 and make it difficult for them. In the old days, there was I think the gap between David and Goliath was a little bit bigger than it is now. Can players on teams like Australia, Peru, are they ready to stand toe to toe? Is the fear factor maybe less than it is, or is France that much of an imposing team?
It's a very good question. How much is familiarity with those players? I mean, obviously you have guys who are playing some of the biggest clubs in the world, but the familiarity between, I watch those guys on TV every week, or I know about Pogba's issues at United and Mourinho's treatment, and it maybe takes away some of that fear factor. That could be interesting. Australia, Peru, Denmark. Who else comes out?
I really like Peru, and I'm probably clouded by romanticism here, but there's so much to love about Peru. I mean, they a truly soccer-mad country that's struggled, kind of been in the wilderness for a few decades now, and they finally got their chance. Their talismanic captain is
back.
Is in the fold. Against the odds, I have to say, I was really pleasantly surprised to see.
It just goes to show you, litigate far enough, and you can get your. Even if there's no decision, they have to let him play because he hasn't been officially. I mean, they just kept overturning decisions and saying, well, we'll kick the can down the road, and then kicked it past the World Cup, and now Paulo Guerrero gets to play for Peru. That's amazing.
A glorious technicality. Yes. And let's point out, too, that he I think surely an influential factor was the letters from the opposition.
From the captains of the teams in his group.
Yeah, yep. Which is a real great sporting gesture. They may come to regret it if he's an impact player. But I have a feeling, again, Peru, one of those countries where there's going to be a lot of pressure and expectation, but when they can, if they can take a deep breath and get the ball down and try and play a bit, I think if they can create 1v1 opportunities in dangerous spots, they have players that can beat anyone.
I think Denmark Denmark and Peru are in the race for second place in that group, and so we'll see what the Danes
We'll see. I wouldn't underrate Australia to any extent. I think Australia, like the United States, is sometimes a victim of old stereotypes that persevere into the modern era. We may see them revert to type under the.
So they're not Cahill and Viduka, and that's it anymore, right?
I think we will see a more modern version of the game, maybe than some people have been led to believe.
Okay, that would make the group even more interesting. All right, we got to get through all of this. Imagine when it's going to be 48 teams and 16 groups of 3, which is okay. We won't put that.
Don't get me started.
Group D: Argentina, Iceland, Croatia, Nigeria. Argentina with all the pressure in the world. Lionel Messi with all the pressure in the world. Iceland, the darlings. Everybody loves them. They're the little engine that could. Croatia, talented, always kind of mercurial in a way. And Nigeria's the same. And I think that obviously people are going. If there is not group of death, but depending on how well Iceland plays, it could be a very fun group.
Yes, I think of course the Messi factor is enormous. I mean, Messi is among many big personalities that are very compelling stories right now. There's none greater for me than Messi. Given what's transpired in his international career, there's some really glaring questions about Argentina, about what their best 11 is, about what how they can. Sampaoli get the best out of the talent that he has.
Is he going to end up relying? I mean, Messi isn't a given, but he's going to end up relying a little bit on the old horses a little bit too much in this tournament. I mean,
Well, that would be ironic if he did. We've seen reports that, of what looks like a fairly old midfield.
I mean, Mascherano's an amazing player, but he's definitely not the player he was 5, 6, 7 years ago.
It's so strange given Sampaoli's history, given what he did with Chile. I mean, really built a renaissance around young players, around a high energy approach. Something, a place where fresh legs were just as valuable in that system as old heads, and so I don't know if he's feeling the pressure in his decisions.
Politics are always part of Argentina, like always. So
I think you're probably right.
Yeah. So I mean, I look at Argentina's going to be a favorite out of the group. Who would you pick between the other three?
It's tough, and again, I know especially here in the U.S.
You're wearing
the neutrals' darlings are Iceland, but I've got a soft spot for Nigeria because I think they're in a really primed and a good place to overcome and to avoid some of the pitfalls of their nation in past World Cups. They have so many young, exciting, sort of beguiling personalities both on the field and off, and I'm really hoping that they put it together. And I think things have kind of set up well for them to do so, because they can fly under the radar to some extent, as much as their kits will allow them to.
Yeah, much as their kits will allow.
In terms of you have Argentina. Argentina is going to occupy a lot of the attention in this group. Iceland's story is going to be reported on exhaustively in many languages. I have no doubt about that. But I think it's there for Nigeria to kind of again find their feet and build up momentum as they move forward.
All right, so we'll see what happens in that group. An interesting group to say the least. Group E, we'll burn through them here. Brazil, Switzerland, Costa Rica, Serbia. CONCACAF rooting for the Ticos, I imagine, on some level. But Brazil, favorite to win their 6th World Cup. The Swiss are tough, and the Serbians obviously have talent too.
Yes, again, I'm interested to see who these teams are. Is Costa Rica, built their 2014 success on really tigerish defending, strong organization, fighting spirit. Is the DNA the same, or do they have to do something different? Do they want to do something different to reach the same heights that they did in Brazil? Certainly, anyone's going to defend against Brazil, so you have to be comfortable doing that. But they're a really interesting story.
Well, I mean, look, it's obvious. It's easy to focus on Brazil. It's easy to talk about Tite and how he sets his team up, and how much is going to be on Neymar to be their creative force coming off the foot injury. I mean, I can't. He scored in some friendlies leading up to the World. I can't imagine he's 100% or unrusty, for lack of a better way of saying it. So, where does their extra bit of attacking verve come from?
Oh, I'm excited to watch Gabriel Jesus in this tournament as well. A very talented young player who, again, may benefit from the circumstances. He doesn't, every Brazilian World Cup player has a lot, riding on their shoulders. But with Neymar sort of being the tentpole attraction there, I think he hopefully will give an opportunity for some of their younger talent to thrive. And I don't think Neymar necessarily, it's obviously not the best case scenario for him, but in terms of form and fitness, but I don't think he has to be at full bore. And again, I think they're going to be able to ease into things, and he'll be platooned, I would expect. I doubt he'll be going 90 minutes off the bat, and that's probably a good situation for him.
I mean, not nearly as much pressure as 2014, and
there can never be.
He was probably not at his full powers yet. I mean, I know we've had the massive transfer in the PSG move, and now he's going to Madrid. I don't know. Yeah, that might happen tomorrow. Who knows? But obviously, not being on home soil means a little bit more ease for Brazil. I think that's probably beneficial to them. They opened up the tournament against Switzerland, who we talked about a little bit, just in terms of being difficult. Shaqiri is their talisman player, but they have some talent there.
Switzerland's roster too is a neat manifestation of modern globalized soccer too, where you have
Turkish influence is massive.
Yeah, I mean, so many immigrant communities and populations in Switzerland, and I think that's brought diversity both of background and thought and ability to their squad. We saw them pull off a few shocks in Brazil 4 years ago. I actually think they're a tough out, relatively speaking, for Brazil in the first game. Yeah. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of that caginess we talked about before. Maybe Switzerland can get a point off Brazil in the opener.
Okay, we had 3 minutes for each one of these three groups left, and Charlie's been very generous with his time. So, Group F is Germany, Mexico, Sweden, South Korea. This is a fascinating group. This is the Germans. who are trying to defend their title. Nobody's done that since Brazil in '62. They're obviously an excellent team with an incredible amount of talent. They've got a coach who knows how to do it because Yogi Löw is back. They have not played great in their warm-up friendlies, but I think that's probably something you completely toss out here.
I think the main question here is goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Is Neuer ready to step in as the number one? I've read some things that really emphasize his importance to the squad. I think that's throwing a little bit of shade at their reserves. I mean, I think there's Is he a transformative presence, that kind of sweeper keeper ability, that skill set he has? Really,
how much can he be that guy though, coming directly off the injury the way that he is? I really wonder. I mean, and how adventurous is he going to be versus what his knee will let him do?
And I think maybe those of us on the outside are underrating the consistency of tactics and skill sets that a really mature infrastructure like Germany can pass on. I mean, I would be very comfortable with either of their backups, and to do not exactly the same thing or to the same extent that Neuer does, but certainly, and it clearly has a big psychological impact on the rest of the squad. But I have a feeling we may not be talking about that quite as much as people think we would if he's not able to go.
The talent there, obvious for Germany. They're facing Mexico in the opener. It's a massive game for Mexico. They can get out of the group without getting anything off of Germany, obviously. But I imagine for Mexican confidence and for, trying to get to El Quinto Partido and actually meet their promise again, playing well against Germany has to be the goal.
Yes, and I'm sure they'll be happy, hunting a point there. I think they could do it. Mexico has a history of raising their game against elite opposition. These are the moments that Mexican players are raised for, dream about. I think, we'll probably talk about the Quinto Partido in a little bit here, but I think this game actually sets up well for El Tri.
And look, I think that they have a clear advantage in terms of talent and competency over Sweden and South Korea. Sweden's not an easy team. I'm not suggesting they are, and South Korea's got a couple of game changers that maybe if they defend well can pop up and make something difficult. But Mexico, their expectations are obviously to get out of the group. They always do that. And then, as we said, the knockout game, winning that first knockout game, getting into the quarterfinals, and something they haven't done before. So it kind of goes downhill. Where we talked about some of these teams, the better teams sort of building into it, this is the toughest game of the group for both Germany and Mexico. Is there any danger of Mexico having a letdown after that?
Certainly. I think there is. And the big question for me with Mexico right now is the scoring. Their scoring has deserted them in their warm-up friendlies. Again, we take all that with a grain of salt, but I think they would have liked to have a player or two in form who got a bit of confidence from actually hitting the net. I think that could be a problem. That's where things can get very complicated, very fraught.
Lots of sort of final third danger, but not that extra little edge to them. They do a lot of that.
Chicharito is the man here, and he's got to step up. This is his moment. This may be the pivotal moment of his career, I think. He needs to be the one. He's the leading suspect, let's say, to be the one to get on the end of things and actually hit the net, finish the chances, bring some clinical finish into the game.
Okay, I think we're probably going to agree, though, that Germany and Mexico get out of the group.
Yes.
Okay.
Do that. No disrespect to Sweden. Again, as you said, they're going to be a very organized, very tough out team.
Yeah, you have to be. I mean, look, they took down Italy, and although this isn't at the height of Italy, that's still an achievement worth celebrating and something that shouldn't be discounted in the tournament. Group G is Belgium, Panama, Tunisia, and England. This is the group of I don't know, outsized expectations without having delivered on it in a while. Obviously, Belgium is all about that golden generation, the talent they produced. It's a fantastic group of guys, but it hasn't come. They didn't have a bad World Cup in 2014, but they didn't meet that promise. And I know people, dark horse. They're going to be the team that maybe wins it from outside of the favorite group. Do you see them as that good? And how much can you trust Roberto Martinez?
There's some real questions about the leadership. I think Martinez does not seem to have everything lined up the way you would want by now. And his managerial track record reflects some of those similar questions. Yeah. It's not just about talent. Again, Spanish teams of the past, the Colombian teams of the past, absolutely just elite in terms of ability and potential. But you need a sort of clubhouse culture. You need to have that. The thing that Brazil and Germany and now Spain have that is so precious in this situation is that collective understanding, that collective belief. I'm really not sure that's
all
there
those
for Belgium.
all those regional divides, all those language divides, all those cultural divides can get kind of pushed away when you come to the tournament. That's what Spain managed to overcome with 08 and 2010 and 2012, and now Belgium's trying to do the same sort of thing without actually obviously the fanfare and the sort of club culture that exists in Spain. So interesting group. So England, I don't want to discount Tunisia or Panama in their first World Cup. Celebrate that team, but England, they kind of bubbled up in the last couple of weeks. People are they're fancying the English a little bit.
I'm probably going to kick myself in a few weeks for saying this, but things do seem to be different this time. There's just the way they carry themselves, starting with Southgate, the manager. There's just a quietness. There's a lack of that. Those sort of, we could point to all these world-class players that were in their previous World Cup teams. That was so much was expected from Beckham, Gerrard, the list of names is huge. I think it's a different environment. I just think it's a different landscape for them right now. I think it sets up very well for their young players to kind of step into the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe England surprises. I mean, certainly Belgium and England expected to get out of the group. Again, no offense to those other two squads here. Let's finish out with Group H: Poland, Senegal, Colombia, and Japan. Is there an obvious choice for first place in this group?
For me, it's the Cafeteros.
Okay.
All the way. Yeah.
I mean, look, they're always good for that.
Yeah.
It's the questions are after that.
The perennial dark horse, as you talked about in relation to Belgium a moment ago. It's true. This is a team that has not always shown in the big moment, has not shown that steel that you need to survive and advance in the World Cup. I'm going to go with them here. I think they benefit from a relatively soft group, relatively.
Yeah.
And I think, again, there's the talent, there's the spirit there to build upon.
Oh, look, we know about James Rodriguez and talk about like a journey since 2014. He was already at Monaco, but he kind of exploded with that tournament. Those goals he scored, fantastic. He gets the move to Real Madrid. It ultimately didn't work out. Now he's on loan to Bayern Munich. That's an insane sentence. I'm on loan from Real Madrid to Bayern Munich is an insane thing to me. And maybe some expectations for him to replicate 2014, but I think Falcao is obviously the more interesting story because he didn't get to play in 2014. So now is he at the age of 32 able to grab them as a captain and add something extra that gets them deeper than they were last time?
And this is one of the beauties of the World Cup, and it's also one of the areas in which uncertainty can be injected into things, is that your age doesn't matter as much. You don't have to be good for 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 38 weeks. You just have to be good for a game at a time, maybe even just a half hour at a time. And I think certainly you have guys there. That attacking talent is incredible if they can all click. They definitely have familiarity with one another, the front line, the athleticism and pace out wide, the collective experiences of the past few years, I think, will serve them well.
So who's second in the group?
Who did I have on that?
Poland, Senegal, and Japan.
I love watching Japan play as much as any team in terms of you talk about a collective,
they got that technique,
a culture of play. I mean, just a really selfless, just beautifully technical, possession-oriented side. But I think Senegal, I have Senegal here, just simply because of the unpredictability and and I know we risk traipsing into some unhelpful stereotypes here, but I think spirit. And I think unpredictability and being, people knowing less about them, I think is going to help them.
All right, so there it is. Little run through all of the World Cup groups. Charlie Boehm, thank you so much for the time. We will see you next time. Thank you for watching Compass Football. Davis up front, little World Cup special for you. Let me just find all of this, and I will we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
So far.
Yeah, we're...